Welcome back to Gig Harbor Paddling. Today we're talking about the top hand follow through. I love to talk to athletes about angles. Angles of the paddle regarding the position against the boat, talking about the angles of the elbow and the hands and all of the things. So with the top hand follow through, it's really important to identify what that top hand doing. So if I'm here at the setup looking at me sideways, this is considered the top hand. From my opposite shoulder all the way through to my other hand. And keeping that frame and the angle proper the whole stroke. If you're not holding the angle correctly, if it's not sitting on a track moving forward, if that hand's not following through the whole way, you're gonna be losing a lot of power. You're gonna be potentially causing injury. It's just inefficient. And so it's important to talk about that follow through, and that's what we're gonna do today.
The reason why he still has positive angle with a really long arm is why? What is his top hand doing? Yeah, it's back and it's still bent. If his top arm was straight, he wouldn't have all that positive angle, even though his front arm was really straight. So he's keeping a straight arm. Yes, that's good. But more importantly, in my opinion, he's got a really good back arm keeping that positive angle. I think that his elbow shifted from maybe my favorite height right there to a little too high right here maybe, but honestly that's pretty good, Kyle. Like, you've been working hard and I think that's good with the elbow. What I really wanted to point out is that you keep it here. So you get buried in the water, and then what does that top hand do? It follows through. And so I'm gonna be pointing out in every single video today what our top hand is doing. Is it following through? When I say follow through, what I'm talking about is it not just stopping at the catch and then like rotating around, but is it pressing against the pressure of the water the whole time? It's okay to have a negative stroke. Why though? It's because if your top hand is following through, it is purposeful in projecting the boat forward. Same thing with you canoers. When I've tried to explain this to quite a few of you, but when you set your elbow at the catch, imagine that suddenly now appears a track, whether it's like and when I say track, I'm talking about like a train track. Like it's a steel track that's forward, it doesn't go up or down or left and right. It's there, and so no matter what you do with the pressure of the arm, with the rotation, that elbow stays on the track as it moves forward. That's what we mean. And so his goal is to keep his elbow from doing this rainbow thing. So see how it came off the track and then it came back down on the track? So that actually has to do with what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is that top arm position. What are you missing out on if you jump off the track? If you're missing the track and you do a rainbow, you're attached to a paddle together, both hands, and so the follow through means it affects what happens here, and you miss entering as far up close to the boat, and you go out to the side and you go back. I'm being a little dramatic here to show you, but that's what's happening. So not as efficient, right? And you have a lot of strength and power that is leaking. Two things. Who here has heard me yell at you to flex your back recently? How many? So mainly the juvie boys. I think it's because all of you battle like this. So I'm telling them, flex your back. Like, imagine someone's back trying to take a photo of all your muscles and flex them, because that helps you solidify things and have good posture, but also it helps your frame stay. The shoulder girdle is an anatomical term, just like your hip girdle, but basically I'm trying to identify what is connected in your shoulder and why it needs to stay put during the stroke, aka hold its frame. So you have your muscles and your bone here with the head in a socket, and then the socket is connected. You got all the sternum right here and the collarbones and the upper vertebrae, and then you got all the other arm right here, and there's so many joints and little wiggly things, I need you to hold it solid, like the shoulder girdle that it is, through the stroke so that there's no wiggling. There's no side to side wiggling, there's no movement, there's no shoulder blades moving independent of each other. They're all dependent together, and it's one frame. And so you can see that he kind of lets the shoulder come up, and it's moving a little different than the other shoulder, and the arm is swooping up and around. And so if we can lock everything down and let it drive forward and keep pressure on from the start to the end of the stroke, that's what's going to propel the boat forward quite a bit. Both of these boys are some of our fastest paddlers on the team, and one of the main reasons why is because they naturally keep the pressure I'm talking about, the follow through, very well with their top hand. They could be even faster if they started that earlier. Instead, they do start that pressure pretty far back. How many hours in the day are you in a kayak versus walking around, sitting around, driving around, playing on the computer around? And everyone here, how many hours of that are we like this? Many. Many, many, many hours. So how are we going to help ourselves on the boat if we're always doing this? You think suddenly because you're in a boat you're going to be prim proper? It's when you're under tension, you're going to degrade to your lowest level of training. And the lowest level of training you guys have is your posture for 20 hours a day. So don't think that just a couple hours a day can negate everything that you establish outside of that. So I just want to highlight that Jack is an example, but a lot of you guys have this problem. It's not just Jack. So that's full leg drive right there. Very nice. And yeah, I think you're jumping the gun a little bit. Whoa, you're jumping the gun a lot. Like you're buried right there and your leg is already down. So yeah, you guys are very in sync, and I like your rhythm, your power. So that's good. And again, you guys have that follow through, but we need to work on the angles just like with Aiden. Work on the angles to getting the follow through to start way earlier, like further up is what I mean, instead of back here. And that's going to happen through stabbing forward and holding the legs. And we can do that through any drills, especially like the tap drills. We can do it through the one-sided drill, especially, and then the holding drill, the power position drill. You can practice that. You're starting your catch right here, like you're buried right here. I want you to be buried up here. So you're going to need to straighten your arm. The closest you get it buried, but the deepest it gets is probably right there. No follow through, right? She's not keeping it on the track. She's not pressing down against the water. And so you're missing out on a lot of power that you have. You have a lot of strength and power because of your leg drive. And so you're moving the boat very well for how little you're actually making contact. So imagine if you did put your whole paddle in the water and you put it in the water further up, you're going to go like twice as fast, you know? Watch out, Claire. Just I think that you do know that pressure, and I think you utilize it, but the problem is the angles. So you start a lot of your pressure right here. Do you see that? So from here to here, we see your pressure, and that's going to drive your boat down and forward, but you still have that pressure. So right here, like your top arm, I like it, it's good. But that should happen when your bottom arm is at setup and at your eyes. I know this is probably a really bad representation of where you're at right now because it's windy and everything in the video, so I'm very sorry about that. But this is what you paddle under pressure, right? Does that make sense? So we know that when Danielle's uncomfortable, she's going to drop her hands, and then her boat is going to not run as smooth. So when Danielle, you feel uncomfortable, I want you to be like, okay, gotta keep my hands up. I gotta reach in between strokes. Reach in between strokes. So your bottom arm, I think, is a culprit here. Look at her set up. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's what I was looking for, Danielle. So that, with that leg drive, that rotation, that's gonna set her up for a really good stroke. So let's see what she does. So she holds the legs super good. So Connor, you were just talking about not doing that. It's hard, especially if you're not balanced. And she's quick to get to the water. So we can see that because I'm barely moving my mouse and she's getting to the water fast. It looks like your arm might bend a little bit, but it's not that bad. And her top arm has stayed bent. And then she exits. She's trying to exit early. I know we've been working on that. I think we could have more follow through. So I think that we should be thinking about your left hand as driving the paddle through the water. So I don't know if this is what you're doing, but sometimes we think of like, so we got your setup, we got the catch, we do the drive. Okay, time to exit. You guys know how I've separated the stroke into parts for you, right? And so I don't think everyone does this, but it's easy to like categorize it and split it up. And so you get through the stroke and then you're like, oh, gotta exit. But what I would love to see more of is a driving exit. So when you decide to take a catch, that means the next time you're conscious, you're already out of the water. It's like a boom, like drive it out of the water and then reach out to drive it out of the water through. We're not just like taking a stroke and then, oh, get it out. It's like a drive it out. And that would help you canoers a lot too through your exit to not drag it. So we're driving by following through with our top hand. You're following through so much that it doesn't stop pressing until you're out of the water. And then when you're out of the water, that's when you extend and that's when you get to reach. It looks like we could get more movement out of the hips forward and back versus side to side. Again, this is a start. But see right there, we saw a good one. It's buried there, and then you go through. Yeah, that's a good leg drive for you. I do think you're trying to keep the paddle too close to you. See how you're all scrunched up there? And so being able to keep your hands higher will solve that problem. But Mike has a really good, his body knows what to do to keep pressure on the blade. Do you guys see his top hand? It comes across so that it can press down. So because his hands are so low, he's like, okay, I got to get the boat up and forward. He knows that's subconsciously, maybe, or consciously, he knows that's what needs to happen. And so his hand comes over here so that he can press down, and he knows that's what needs to happen. If his hands were up higher, and he could just drive, it would be so much easier. He'd be much more free to do that. But because his hands are low, you can see all the weird angles happening in the tightness, and it looks uncomfortable because of that. So that's another reason why we just want the hands to be higher. Something that you guys could take away is I do reach out a lot. So my posture isn't the best right now. I could sit up more, and I could have a taller setup, but I have the follow through and I reach forward into the next stroke. I hold my legs down until the catch. So there's my knee, there's my catch, I'm buried, and then you see the leg drive. And you can see that my front hand is driving against the paddle right until I start bringing the paddle out of the water. And then I reach forward and I stretch out, and I'm trying to I do it probably more on this side, but do you see the straight arm? I'm trying to make myself as long as possible so that when I bury the blade, it's as far up as possible. Lots of things I need to be working on too. I need to be squaring out more, sitting out more, all that stuff too. But that is something that if you see a paddler moving and you're like, whoa, they don't really have good technique, but they're still moving fast, it's probably because they know how to press against that paddle, no matter the angle. And they could get faster if they applied the principles that we are talking about today.